Hello, welcome to Let's Talk About It. I am your host, Chevis Mays, and unfortunately, we will not be having my co-host again tonight. This is just a topic that she just had chosen to kind of stay away from today, but we will unpack it, as we continue to talk more about the topic. So today, we're going to be talking about the cycle of violence. And one of the things that I am promising you is that we are going to run through all of our episodes in 30 minutes or less. Okay? So today, we're going to be talking about the cycle of violence in a domestic violence relationship. There may be some trigger warnings, and there may be some things discussed that makes you feel uncomfortable. So just know it is okay for you to take care of yourself. Understand that no matter what you've gone through in domestic violence, it wasn't your fault. And if you are currently in a domestic violence relationship, help is available by calling 1-800-799-SAFE. Okay? So today we are going to be discussing just the cycle of violence and what's tied into the cycle of violence. There's 4 phases that's within the cycle of violence. And the first phase, as we all know, it's the honeymoon phase, right? No one goes into it's kind of like a marriage. No one goes into a relationship in the beginning not showing up their best self, right? So when we meet someone, it's pretty much the honeymoon phase. Everybody's on their best behavior. Everybody is showing their best self. There's attention, there's flowers, candy, cards, trips. You're pretty much just wooed. And everything you see in this person is it's love. It's attractive. It's what I've wanted. My soulmate, a lot of times we even call it, And then after the honeymoon phase ends and you've been in this relationship for a little while, you ease into what we call the tension building phase. And what it looks like, it's the atmosphere in the relationship, basically. It becomes increasingly tense. The perpetrator/abuser, they may begin showing signs of irritability, anger, or frustration. And you do see some power and control tactics that's used sometimes. The victim also often feels like they're what I like to call they're walking on eggshell. You know something's about to happen, you just don't know when, and you're trying to do everything you can to prevent an outburst. There may be some verbal abuse, there may be some intimidation, there may be some emotional manipulation, or minor incidents of physical abuse. And that's that small thing of maybe pushing or showing the aggression by using body language. And what the victim often experiences, of course, anxiety, fear, confusion, and hypervigilance. But the main thing that really gets me, a desire to placate or fix the situation. Why? Because we're always fixers. And often blaming ourselves for the abuse. For example, I shouldn't have asked Billy to pay the light bill when I know he's not making enough money, or something like that, or he's in between jobs, or he's dealing with a lot right now, and I shouldn't have done this, or I shouldn't have done that. Okay, so we're big on taking the blame and trying to fix it so that it doesn't happen again. Okay, but no matter what you do, the abuse is going to continue, and it's going to be, incidents of the rupture, the pot on the kettle, right? Or the kettle that's ready to whistle, the pressure cooker, the pressure. It's finally there. And you know how when you put water in a tea kettle, and once it gets its hottest, it finally, it whistles, it explodes. That's what this next phase is called. It's called the explosion. This is where it looks like the actual abuse, okay? This is where you could be physically assaulted. It involves, I'm just going to say it, SA. And yes, in a marriage or in a relationship, you can be SA'd, okay? There's emotional degradation. There's threats. There's even destruction of your property. They'll tear up your car. They can cut your tires. They throw things, break mirrors, just anything to show I have the power, and you are inferior to me. Okay, so there's that part of it. Then there's also financial control. Okay, this is where the abuser is controlling the money. You don't know what's in the bank account. You don't know, you're given an allowance as an adult. You're given an allowance. They don't want you to work. They want you to stay home. They don't want you to go to school. They don't want you to do anything to better yourself. And because, again, the more control you have over your life, the more control the less control they have, okay? So those are typically the phases of the abuse. And then after the explosion, this is where the abuser comes back, possibly, and says, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it. But you upset me, but you know what triggers me, but you said this or you did that. And so what does that do? That puts the victim in a place of, again, walking on eggshells. Now I know what not to do because I don't want to upset Billy. I don't want to upset him. So, now I'm going to, in order for us to get back to that place of our honeymoon, I have to do something to change. I have to. It's not his fault. It's on me. Okay. So then after that happens, you go back into the honeymoon phase. Okay. And this is after I'm sorry. Here comes the flowers, the candy, the cards. Here comes the honeymoon again. And guess what? You have now entered what we call a vicious cycle. Okay, Chevis, I'm in this cycle. How do I get out of it? First, by acknowledging and understanding that if you are in a relationship that is unsafe, that is unhealthy, there's control and you have none of it, and there's physical abuse and there's financial abuse, first acknowledging it, coming out of denial. And there are safe places that you can call to get the help that you need. Okay? And I want to also say this. Domestic violence does not only happen in heterosexual relationships. Okay? It could be same-sex relationships, but if it's domestic violence, it is intimate relationships, okay? So if it's like between a dad and a son, no, that's family violence. There is a difference between domestic violence and family violence. Family violence is things outside of intimate relationships. So just know that, the other one that goes untalked about is, men can't be abused by their female partners. Not true. It happens vice versa. However, it goes more unreported. Well, why do you say it goes more unreported? Because it's usually a masculinity thing for men to not report. And because men are, for the most part, stronger, so they say physically, than a woman, then it could feel like, well, why would I report this little person putting their hands on me? So sometimes it goes unreported, but it does happen. And the bottom line is, it's not okay for anybody to be intimately abused in an intimate relationship, okay? No one should experience any form of abuse, whether it's a intimate relationship of heterosexual or same-sex relationship, period. Okay? So I want to like really be transparent about this topic, and I want to acknowledge that I am a survivor. I am a survivor. But you know what? I'm going to take that back. I am not a survivor. I am today a warrior who has experienced domestic violence for many years. And that relationship has happened to me more than once. Okay, well, how is it that you was in a relationship that was DV and then you got out of it and then you entered another one? Easy, because I didn't allow myself to heal from the first one. And then there was a part of me that felt like it's normal. It's all I knew. Again, let's take it back to childhood trauma. Let's take it back there. If that's what you see, if you don't see healthy relationships, you have nothing to mock. So quite naturally, once I was old enough to get into intimate relationships, a couple of them were abusive. One relationship I was in for a whole 13 years. 13 years of being physically, mentally, financially, spiritually, and SA. And the only reason why I was able to make it out of that relationship was because it finally came to a term to where I was abused so badly that the person ended up going to prison for assaulting me. And then I had to go through the system, of course, to get the victims of crime compensation and be relocated and things of that nature, and start all over. And how I realized I was a victim of DV is because once I got out of that relationship, I needed to move. I needed to get away. I needed to relocate. And I relocated back to the state that I was born in. And I just needed a job. I needed a job. I was working at Kaiser Permanente before I went relocated back to my state after this relationship. And so I knew of the job that I was going to get. You know, the wages was super low. There was no way that I was going to be making the money, but I just needed a job. So long story short, a friend of the family was a manager at a domestic violence shelter. And I asked her for a job. I just needed a job. So she gave me the opportunity and she said, well, Chevis, you're going to have to go through this training and so that, you know, you can learn more about DV. And lo and behold, as I was sitting in that training, she got to describing my life, what I just escaped from. And that's when I knew that I was a victim of a crime called domestic violence. Something in me sparked, and I took on that passion. And my career has pretty much been in victims of crime, domestic violence, SA, and human trafficking. So when I say that I'm never ever going to come from a place with these podcasts of trying to teach, I'm going to come from real transparency and being real. Okay? I'm not going to talk about something that I have not lived. Okay? So, long story short, I got involved. I learned about the cycle of violence, realized it was my life. Then I started learning about the power and control and why people stay in abusive relationships. And every bit of it resonated with me. Every bit of it. And I just, to this day, I'm very, very, very passionate. Not only, I'm very passionate about women, first of all, because I am a woman and I gave birth to 3 of them. But about crime, victims of crime, period, no matter who it is, whether it's children, whether it's just anybody that has experienced any type of abuse or has been a victim of a crime, I'm passionate about that. Okay. So with that, Once I started learning, I said, you know what? I did a lot for that small town, and made some great connections, and helped with the foundation of opening up a brand new shelter, and ribbon cutting, and raising awareness with law enforcement and the sheriff's department, and doing dedications called Casting of the Roses, where we did a ceremony for people who were unalive due to DV. And as I got more educated, I said, you know what? I want to go back to California. And so I applied for a job in Sacramento at a DV shelter called WEAVE, which stands for Women Escaping a Violent Environment. And I was at that shelter for 7 years started off as a case manager. Then I was the lead advocate. And then I said, I stayed with that organization for 7 years. Then I said, you know what? I got to take this a step higher. I need to grow as much as I can grow in this field to make sure that I'm raising awareness. And I have my boots on the ground in this field. So then I went to Placer County, where I worked for 10 years as a housing coordinator for an agency, working with victims of crime or domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. And I've just, used my own life experience to raise awareness, to help people, and to let people know, DV doesn't have a face. It looks like any of us. It looks like any of us. White, black, brown, male, female, teenager. It doesn't have a face. But one thing I can say, if you want to heal from that, you can. And guess what? That's what I was telling myself then. But guess what ended up happening? I ended up in another abusive relationship. Another one for 7 years. And I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed to say it. This is my testimony. This is my truth, and I'm going to live it. And I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat, and I'm not going to sit here and lie about nothing. I ended back up in another 7-year abusive relationship that, again, almost took my life, literally. And another prison sentence for someone else. How is it that you continue to attract these types of relationships? Because when you don't understand your worth, and when you feel like you can't do no better, and that's the best that I can do, and it's just too hard to start over, and I love this person and they love me, and everybody has problems, and you just continue to repeat the cycle. So the same way we go through the cycle of violence in the relationship, we go through that same cycle of not healing that causes us to get back in those relationships. I'm supposed to be able to recognize the red flags. I'm supposed to know better. But I didn't. And guess what? It came with a cost. It came with a cost. It cost me homelessness. Yes, it cost me homelessness. It almost cost me my job. It cost me a lot of money. So it affected me financially, emotionally. I was depressed. I didn't know who I was anymore. But I still continued to work in that field. And I continued the cycle because I was too afraid to break it. And I know I'm not by myself. I know there's other people out there that has experienced what I experienced. And if we tell the truth, experiencing it now. Now, I can say that through all of that pain, through all of that loss, through all of those setbacks, I'm definitely in a different space today. I know a healthy relationship, but have I arrived? No, I have not. Because guess what? Sometimes there's still things that trigger me. You can't raise your voice to me because it immediately startles me. Or it's that fire or fight type of mode that I can be in. There's certain sensitivities that I have. Very sensitive. Very sensitive. Wear my heart on my sleeve. Because I was so used to being told what I wasn't, what I ain't gonna be, how I don't deserve love, how I wasn't beautiful, how I was nothing, and I'm never gonna be nothing. And I believed that because, again, when you receive those negative messages and you don't know anything different, you internalize that. So you have to unlearn learned behaviors. I had to get tired of being tired. And I had to take, I could no longer blame my abuser. Because, see, it wasn't him that was going to change. Obviously. The only thing that needed to change in that relationship was for me to leave and me to love myself enough to know that I deserved better and to cut that thing off. And it didn't matter if I had to go to a shelter. I would rather sleep under a bridge before I would go back to that. It didn't matter if I had to take a job making less money. It didn't matter if I had to go live in the project. It didn't matter if I had to go to human services and get on food stamps, welfare, or whatever. It didn't matter. I was going to do what I had to do to get my life back. And that's what it took. And that's what I had to do. I have risen from the ashes. Now, would I be in a relationship like that today? No, because guess what? I recognize red flags immediately. I even recognize red flags when it ain't even an intimate relationship. Just by people's vibe and energy, I pick up on that. I have prayed and asked God to give me a spirit of discernment. And that's what I thrive on. My connection with people today, whether it's family, friends, co-workers, it's all based off of discernment. I don't allow people to treat me just any kind of way. I set my boundaries. I show respect, and guess what? I'm going to get respect. You don't have to like me, and I don't have to like you. But one thing I will not tolerate is disrespect from anyone. And guess what? You don't have to either. You deserve respect. You deserve love. You are worthy. You are beautiful. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And don't you ever forget that. And the only people that will do things to tell you what you're not, it's because they don't see it in themselves. And last but not least, I'm going to say what I always say. We are not responsible for our trauma, but we are responsible for our healing. Okay? So, we're going to wrap up this episode. I hope you got some great information out of this. And I'm asking you to please like, subscribe, and comment. And also know if there's a topic that you would like to talk about, please feel free to let us know. We will research it if we don't know it. But let us know. Let us know how we're doing. Not only that, the next topic that we're going to discuss power and control and things that are tied into power and control. Okay? No judgment zone whatsoever. Again, you're not responsible for your trauma, but you are responsible for your healing. And until the next time, you stay blessed. And I'm going to quote my daughter. She always says, eliminate what no longer serves you. Get rid of it. Thank you. And until next time, let's talk about it and have a great evening. Bye.